There's this old movie called The Matrix that I used to be able to reference all the time because everybody had seen it, but now no one's seen it. But basically, the movie is about a guy who realizes the world is all digital, and he becomes the hero and has to save the world. But there's this one scene that I remember in this movie where the hero, who is played by Keanu Reeves, he has to fight somebody, but he doesn't know how to fight very well. And in this world, everything's digital, and so they plug him into a computer, and then they upload the ability to do like kung fu. Here's the scene.
Oh shit. Hey, Mikey, I think he likes it. Want some more? Oh yes. Oh yeah. What was it? 10 hours straight. He's a machine. I know kung fu.
That's why it's called the I Know Kung Fu scene. So, why am I showing you a clip from The Matrix? Well, when we're coding in Java, there's a lot of things that people have already done in Java, and we don't need to recreate the wheel. And so this is the blank slate. This is kind of like we can put whatever code we want in here and things will happen. So we've talked about that the last time. Anything we put between here and here will automatically happen. But one other thing that we can do is if we actually go up here and put some stuff above, we can import already existing Java libraries. And if you think about Greenfoot, we've already done this a little bit when we've imported things like timers and we've imported things like labels and counters. You know, those are things that someone else made and we want to use them in our program. That's what I'm going to do here in code. I'm going to type import Java, and then this stands for the utility library, and I'm going to import something called the scanner. And what the scanner allows me to do is scan for input from a user. Okay. Now, if we were using NetBeans in class, then I would be able to show you that the program will actually pause and it will actually wait for the user to type something. But we're using JDoodle, so we're going to do it a slightly different way. Down here you see stdin inputs. This is where we're going to put input for our program. I'm going to show you how it works. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside my coding area, so between these two brackets, and I'm going to create a scanner object. Now, don't get too hung up on this. It's going to look weird at first, but again, consider Greenfoot. It looks a lot like the kinds of things we were doing in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new scanner object. And I'm going to tell the scanner object to look for input that's coming from the standard system input. In other words, this line says, it's kind of like creating an object that's going to constantly look for input from the user. And I'm calling it S. And I'm only calling it S because I wanted to. I could have called it my scanner. I could have called it Steve. It doesn't matter. I'm making up the name here. I'm just going to call it S. Okay? And S has the ability to get input from the user. Now, on the very next line, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type string name equals s dot next line, like this. What this line says is I want to get the next line of input from the user, and I'm going to store it in what we call a string variable. And a string variable is just a variable that will hold on to whatever is going to be in here. So in this case, I'm going to type my name, and so it's going to be held in this variable called name. And if I then say I want to take that name variable, system.out.println, and I want to spit it out to the screen like so, And my tabs are a little bit off. See how this is not properly aligned? I want to make sure that's right. So I'm going to tab this over. There we go. So if I run this program, whatever I put in the system input, which is right here, is going to be read by the computer. So this line, don't forget, a lot of people think this line reads the input. It does not. What it does is it creates a scanner called S, which is going to scan for input. It's this line here that reads the input. This little bit of code here says get me the next line. And it's going to get the next line, store it here, and print it out. So if I put my name here, watch what's going to happen. Execute, and you see John, because that is what was read using this. So whatever it reads goes into name, and we print out name. If I had not put anything here at all, then the program's going to hang. It's just going to sit there waiting for input. And since I didn't put any input, it's just going to wait and wait and wait and wait. And eventually I'll just have to stop it myself and realize, oh crap, I forgot to put input. I'll put something different. Whatever I put here is going to be spit out. And it can be, in this case, a string, which is what we're holding. Whatever the user types in, we're going to hold it as a string variable, not an integer, not a decimal, but basically a string of characters. It can be anything. It can be numbers, it can be letters, it can even have spaces in there. It could even have, weird signs like the tilde or anything I put in here is going to get spit right back out to the screen because I told it to right here. I can go further than that as well. So if I wanted to say hello to myself, I could write in here, put in quotes, hello, and then like so. So I say hello, literally hello. Remember, this is called a string literal because anything in the double quotes, this is exactly what's going to get printed out. And then it's going to print out the value of name, which is whatever's read from the computer. So we'll see hello, John, right here. Okay, great. What if you want to get something else? What if you don't want, what if you want to get a number? Well, I just showed you. You can put a number here, like 34. It'll say hello 34. But what if I wanted to do math on that? So let's try something here. Let's see if we can get a number here. So instead of calling it name, I'm going to call it num. And I'm going to see if I can do, I'm going to do some math on this. So I'm going to put num plus 5. Okay, and I'm going to spit that out to the screen. So whatever I put into num, like whatever I type, my input here, 34 plus 5, I think I should see 39, right? 34 plus 5 is 39. That's what I should see because we're going to get the input. The input is going to be 34, and then we're going to print out 34 plus 5. Let's see if it works. Okay, so we get 345. And this is where data types become very important. I told the computer that the input I was going to get was a string, which means a word. And so it thinks that I'm trying to take the word 34 and just glue on a 5 at the end. And so we get this. But watch what happens if I do this. If I type int num, and then I'm going to take this, and instead of going next line, I'm going to type next int. And this is going to get me an integer value. So I'm going to execute it. And now you see 39. And that's because now the computer realizes that this is an integer value that we're going to get from the user, and we are going to do some math on that. Now this will fail if I try to type John here because it's going to try to get an integer value, which is John. That's not going to work out well, and so now it's going to crash because you can't have an integer when you've got these letters coming in from the user, but any numeric value that's an integer, it's going to be able to do the math on it for me. Okay, and that means now that I know how to get an integer value, I can do stuff like this. If the number I get is greater than 50, for example, then I could do something else. I could do something different. So let's just make a little bit of code here that says if the number is greater than 50, we'll do something, and if it's less than or equal to 50, we'll do something else. So I'll say system.out.println high num, and then system.out.println low num. And I'm sure you're all getting used to these semicolons that have to be on every line. And so this is going to take an integer number from the input, and if that number is above 50, we print out high num. If it's below 50, we print out low num. So if I execute this, we should see high num, and we do. If I put 44 right here, we should see low num, and we do. So we can take user input, and we can make decisions based on that user input, which is very powerful. I can also do things like get multiple numbers. So I can say int num1, int num2. So I can do something like this. And what this is going to do is get two inputs. So if I put a 25 here first and a 50 second, it's going to read the 25 and put that into num1, and it's going to read 50 and put that into num2. And then if I ask it to do a little bit of math on that, if I say print out, say num1 plus num2, and I run it, you see we get 75. Okay, so you don't have to get just one input, you can get multiple inputs, and you can do stuff with them. The one other thing I want to show you before I stop is, let's go back to the situation where we want to get a word from the user. So if we're going to get a word from the user, we're going to put a string in front, meaning we're telling the computer we're going to get a string of characters from the user. Let's just call it my string, or maestra. So I'm going to make a string variable called maestra, and if I want to get a string, I have to put next line right here. And by the way, there's also a next double. If you want to get decimal values from the user, you might need that. But I want to type next line. So I'm going to get a string value from the user, and I'm going to do something. What if I said something like, if the user types in the word computer, then you print out science. So we want to say computer science. I don't know, I'm just making this up. So here I put if maestra, and I use equals equals to compare. So if it turns out that the user types computer, then what I want to do is type system.out.println, and then I want to type science. So again, not the greatest example. Actually, we could do it. Let's do a slightly different one. Let's say if the user puts the word Toronto, then we're going to print out Maple Leafs. Better. Let's see if this works. I think what we're going to find is that it's not going to work the way we expect. So let's make our user input Toronto. So this is the user typing in Toronto. I execute, and sure enough, I'm not getting anything here. Now, does that mean it failed? Well, kind of, but only because there's a slight difference. When we're comparing strings, if I want to know if the string that the user typed in is equal to Toronto, I actually can't use these double equal sign. This double equal sign is only really meant for numbers. And so what I have to do is type dot matches, and then I put Toronto in brackets. So just to make that a little clear, I'm going to put some spaces here and put some spaces here. This is what we're doing. And what we're doing is we're saying my string is what we got from the user. We want to know if it matches the word Toronto. Okay? And the other brackets are just because we have to put brackets around the if statement. So if I run it now, you see Maple Leafs. Okay, so when you're comparing string variables, you want to use the dot matches function. But if you're using integers, if I were to change this to an integer, and now I'm getting an integer value from the user, I don't have to use matches anymore. And Maestro is now a bad name, but so we could just call our variable my int. And so if I want to know if the user types in, say, 10, I don't use the dot matches feature. I just go equals 10. So if, in this case, if the user puts in a 10, then we will see Maple Leafs. Let's see if it works. I'll put a 10 right here, execute, and you see maple leaves. If I put a 3, you will not see anything at all. Okay? So, to sum up, you have to have this to import the scanner library, which will allow you to get input from a user. You put your input here in JDoodle. That's just the way JDoodle works. And then here is the code that creates what we call a scanner object. We've called ours S. And then this line of code in this case is where you actually get the input from the user and you store it in a variable. And we've done examples where you can have integers, but you can also have strings. Okay? So with all that new knowledge, you should be able to go and do the assignment. And remember, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask questions in the discussion area. Okay, good luck everybody.